All right, strap in everyone. We're about to take a deep dive into some seriously murky waters here at the Daily News Podcast. We've been digging deep into former President Trump's business dealings, and, well, the deeper we go, the more questions we seem to have.
And what's particularly interesting is that even though Trump's no longer in office, his business activities continue to generate a lot of attention and scrutiny.
Yeah, it's like a never-ending saga. Over the past few days, we've uncovered a mountain of information about Trump's connections and deals, and some of these situations are, let's just say, they're raising some eyebrows.
And it's important to understand why these dealings matter. The intersection of business and politics, especially when it involves a former president, has significant implications for our government, public trust, and even national security.
Okay, so let's jump into the first big story that our team here at the Daily News Podcast uncovered. It's a massive $20 billion investment in U.S. data centers by a UAE company called Damac Properties. Now, on the surface, this might seem like a good thing, right? It means jobs, technology, infrastructure. But here's where it gets a little sticky.
While a large investment in infrastructure like data centers might appear positive, it's important to look closer. Damac is led by Hussein Sajwani, a billionaire who has a close relationship with Trump.
Yeah, and I'm not talking about a casual handshake at a charity event kind of relationship. They've done business together before, like on that Trump International Golf Club in Dubai. So the question becomes, is this $20 billion investment a purely strategic business decision, or is there more to it?
Some financial experts are suggesting that this deal might be more about personal favors than sound economic strategy. $20 billion, while a significant sum, is only a small fraction of the overall projected investments in the data center sector in the coming years. So why this deal and why now? It does make you wonder.
It really does. And to make things even more interesting, Sajwani appeared at one of Trump's recent press conferences and praised Trump, saying that his election was fantastic for global investment opportunities. That certainly caught our attention here at the Daily News Podcast.
A public endorsement like that from someone so closely tied to Trump definitely blurs the line between private business relationships and public roles. It raises questions about whether Trump is leveraging his former position for personal gain. And with data centers becoming more and more vital for industries, we need to be sure these investments are based on strategic considerations, not personal connections.
Right. It's not just about the money. It's about the potential influence and who benefits from these deals. And this isn't the only instance where Trump's business interests are raising red flags. Let's move on to the LIV Golf Tournament.
Ah, yes, the LIV Golf Tournament.
Our team discovered that Trump's Doral Resort in Miami will host the tournament again in April. This will be the fourth consecutive year Doral has hosted the tournament. LIV has also held events at Trump's properties in New Jersey and D.C. So what's the big deal with LIV Golf?
The key issue here is that LIV Golf is financed by Saudi Arabia's sovereign wealth fund. This fund is essentially controlled by the Saudi government. So every time Trump hosts one of these tournaments, he's essentially profiting from a foreign government.
And of course, we can't ignore the fact that Trump is considering running for president again. Imagine that. A presidential candidate who is directly profiting from a foreign power.
It certainly raises serious ethical questions. And the potential for undue influence is very real. It undermines the integrity of our entire democratic process.
Okay, so we've got the data center deal, the Saudi golf tournaments, and believe it or not, there's even more. Now let's talk about Melania Trump.
This one involves a documentary about the former First Lady. Amazon reportedly paid $40 million to secure the rights to this film.
$40 million for a Melania Trump documentary. Who's clamoring for that? And here's the other interesting part. Jeff Bezos, the founder of Amazon, is reportedly the one who personally made this deal happen. Remember all those photos of him and Trump hanging out at Mar-a-Lago? Those were interesting times.
Yes, those meetings certainly raised eyebrows at the time. Now, some people might view this documentary deal as a typical business transaction, but given the prior relationship between Bezos and Trump, it could be interpreted as a way for Bezos to stay on the good side of the Trump family.
Right. Like, hey, let me spend $40 million on this documentary. Even if it doesn't make a profit, consider it a little thank you for who knows what in the future.
It's definitely a move that warrants further scrutiny. And when you consider that Amazon outbids streaming giants like Netflix and Apple for the rights to this documentary, it really makes you wonder about the perceived value of being close to the Trumps.
You're telling me this isn't the first time we've seen big companies seemingly throw money at the Trumps? Remember that Disney lawsuit that ended with Disney paying millions? It seems like proximity to the Trump brand comes with a hefty price tag.
That does appear to be a recurring theme, yes.
Okay, we've covered UAE billionaires, Saudi Golf, and a Melania documentary, but we're not done yet. Hold on tight, because we're about to enter the world of Meta, the parent company of Facebook. And they've been making some moves lately that are, well, perplexing, to say the least.
One move that has sparked a lot of conversation is their decision to add UFC President Dana White to their board of directors.
Yes, Dana White, a well-known Trump ally, is now on the board of one of the most powerful social media companies in the world.
That's right. And it's led many to question whether Meta is intentionally building closer ties with Trump-era figures.
It almost seems like they're trying to build a little Trumpian network within Meta.
It's too early to say for certain what Meta's intentions are, but it's definitely a development worth monitoring. And then there's the whole issue of content moderation.
Oh yes, that's a whole other can of worms. Meta recently announced they're ending their fact-checking efforts and moving their content control team from California to Texas. They cited dissatisfaction with California's policies, but some see it as a move to appeal to Trump's base.
The concern is that these changes could lead to a surge in misinformation on the platform.
So are they basically saying goodbye to facts and hello to anything goes?
It's a concerning development for sure. We need to be wary of attempts to blur the line between fact and fiction, especially on platforms as influential as Facebook.
Okay, let's take a step back for a moment. We've got UAE investments, Saudi Golf, a Melania documentary, Meta's power plays, and through it all, the shadow of Trump looms large. We're seeing his influence everywhere, and these situations are raising a lot of questions. It's a lot to unpack.
It is, and it's important to remember that these individual stories are all pieces of a larger puzzle that reveals the complex relationship between business, politics, and power. It's a web that we need to carefully unravel.
It's a tangled web indeed, and we're going to dig deeper into this web right after a short break. We'll be back with more on this story. Stay with us.
And it's a web we need to untangle because the potential consequences of these dealings could impact all of us.
You're right. We can't just dismiss this as business as usual, especially when you consider what might happen if Trump decides to run for president again in 2024.
If he does decide to enter the race, his business dealings will undoubtedly become a central issue. His opponents will almost certainly use these situations to paint him as someone who prioritizes personal gain over the interests of the nation.
And let's be honest, that's not a good look for any candidate. Voters want to believe that their leaders are making decisions that benefit the country as a whole, not just their own wallets.
Exactly. Public trust is the bedrock of a healthy democracy, and these types of financial entanglements erode that trust.
It also makes you question the whole issue of accountability. How can we possibly hold someone accountable for their actions in office when their business interests are so intertwined with their political decisions? It seems like a recipe for disaster.
You've hit on a critical point. We need stronger mechanisms in place to ensure transparency and prevent conflicts of interest. Some experts propose stricter financial disclosure requirements for all public officials. Others believe we need an independent ethics commission with real teeth, a commission that can investigate these situations and enforce the rules.
It sounds like we need a system that prevents these questionable situations from happening in the first place, rather than trying to clean up the mess after the fact.
I agree. Prevention is key. Clear guidelines, robust oversight, and a culture of accountability that discourages these kinds of entanglements. That's what we need.
And we can't forget about the role of these corporations. They're not just passive bystanders in all of this. They're actively choosing to do business with Trump, investing in his ventures, and potentially seeking to influence his decisions.
That's a crucial aspect of this conversation. Corporations have a responsibility to act ethically and transparently. Their involvement in these deals raises serious questions about their motives and whether they're putting profits ahead of principles.
It really highlights the outsized influence of money in politics. When large companies can just throw millions of dollars at a former president, it creates an uneven playing field and distorts the entire democratic process. It feels like the system is rigged in favor of the wealthy and powerful.
That's a valid concern. It's a systemic problem that demands a comprehensive solution. Campaign finance reform, stricter lobbying regulations, limits on corporate political spending. We need to explore all options to limit the influence of money in politics.
So this goes far beyond Trump himself. It's about the system as a whole, a system that enables these situations to thrive. But let's bring it back down to earth for a moment. What does all of this mean for everyday Americans? Why should they care about these complex financial dealings?
That's a great question. At the end of the day, this is about more than just money and power. It's about the very foundation of our democracy. When powerful figures are allowed to operate without transparency or accountability, it undermines public trust and erodes our faith in the entire system.
It's like watching the whole foundation start to crumble.
Exactly. And when that happens, it's not just the elites who suffer. Everyday Americans are the ones who end up bearing the brunt of the consequences.
They're the ones who are left with a government that doesn't represent their interests, a system that feels rigged against them.
And a growing sense of disillusionment that can lead to apathy and disengagement from the political process. People start to believe that their voices don't matter and that the system is beyond repair.
So this isn't just some abstract political drama playing out in the news. It has real-world consequences for all of us. It's not just about Trump, it's about the very future of our democracy.
You're absolutely right. It impacts our economy, our security, and our way of life. We need to stay informed and engaged if we want to protect our democracy from the damaging effects of these situations.
We can't afford to be complacent. We need to demand better from our leaders, from corporations, and from ourselves. We need to hold them accountable, scrutinize their actions, and fight for a system that truly prioritizes the common good over private interests.
I couldn't agree more. We're at a critical juncture. We can either turn a blind eye and allow these issues to worsen, or we can rise to the occasion and demand better. It's our choice to make. We need to step up and protect our democracy, working together to create a better future.
Powerful words. This whole situation is a wake-up call for all of us. We need to recognize that we have the power to make a difference. But where do we even start? What concrete actions can we take to tackle these complex issues?
That's the question we all need to be asking. And fortunately, it's not a question without answers. There are concrete steps we can take to create a more ethical and accountable system.
Well, let's explore those steps. What can we, both as individuals and as a society, do to start addressing these challenges? What can we do to make a difference? We're back and ready to shift our focus from problems to solutions. It's easy to feel overwhelmed by everything we've been talking about, but I honestly believe that we have the power to make a difference.
I agree. Change is definitely possible, but it'll require us all to work together.
So what are some tangible steps we can take? Where do we even begin to address these challenges?
One crucial step is to advocate for stronger ethics laws. We need clear rules in place that prevent conflicts of interest and hold public officials accountable.
So we're talking about closing those loopholes that allow for, shall we say, creative dealings and favors. No more turning a blind eye.
Exactly. We need a system with more transparency. Stricter financial disclosure requirements for public officials could be a good start, along with limits on post-government employment, preventing officials from using their connections for personal gain after they leave office. And of course, we need to make sure the rules are actually being enforced.
Right? Rules without enforcement aren't really rules, are they? It seems like we need more people keeping a close eye on these things, making sure everything's above board.
Absolutely. That's where investigative journalism and watchdog groups come in. They can uncover those complex networks of influence and expose any wrongdoing. We need more people digging into these stories, connecting the dots and making sure that the truth sees the light of day.
So it's like we need a whole army of accountability champions out there.
Right.
Holding everyone's feet to the fire.
We do. And we, as citizens, have a role to play in supporting those efforts. We can subscribe to investigative news outlets, donate to those watchdog organizations, and share their findings with our networks. We need to use our voices to amplify their message.
So it's about raising awareness, putting pressure on those in power, right? But what about the corporations involved in all of this? They're not just innocent bystanders. How do we hold them accountable?
We need to push for more transparency from corporations when it comes to their political spending, their lobbying efforts, and any deals that raise ethical red flags.
So hitting them where it hurts their bottom line.
Exactly. Consumers have a lot of power. We can choose to support businesses that align with our values and boycott those that engage in unethical practices.
So we need stronger regulations, investigative journalism, corporate accountability. It's a multifaceted approach, but it all comes down to one thing. We, the people, need to stay engaged. We need to vote in every election, contact our elected officials, and make our voices heard.
You're absolutely right. A healthy democracy depends on informed and active citizens who are willing to hold their leaders accountable. Apathy is the enemy of progress. If we want a better future, we have to be willing to fight for it.
That's a message I think we could all get behind. It's easy to feel helpless in the face of all this, but we can't give up. We need to keep talking about these issues, stay informed, and demand better from our leaders.
I agree. This is a call to action for all of us. Let's use these revelations as a catalyst for positive change.
I love that a catalyst for positive change. We're not powerless, we're not alone, and we can make a difference. That's what I want everyone listening to take away from this conversation. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive today. I know it's been heavy, but my hope is that you're leaving feeling empowered, informed, and ready to take action. The future of our democracy really is in our hands.
That's right. And remember, every action, big or small, can contribute to a wave of change. Don't underestimate the power you have to make a difference. Get involved, speak up, and demand better. We can do this.
And that's it for this episode of The Deep Dive. We'll be back next time with another deep dive into a topic that's shaping our world. Until then, stay curious, stay engaged, and stay hopeful. We're all in this together.